Okay, so check this out. Apparently, the New York Times is basically turning into like Lord of the Flies and are having a meltdown of epic proportion. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. New York Times meltdown plays out in private Facebook group. We do not tolerate racist language, regardless of intent, might be the most racist statement I've ever heard. Listen, I keep telling you guys, I'm actually not as worried about the Democrats controlling everything as a lot of you are, because there's already so much infighting in the left that I really don't think they're going to be able to get it together to pass as much of their crazy stuff as all of us might think. And that's just fine with me, man. If they're gonna fight and bicker for the next couple of years until the red wave in the House can come, assuming the GOP doesn't screw it up, which the GOP could very well screw it up, but that is a different topic for a different day. Like, I am perfectly fine sitting back and watching them bicker for the next couple of years. I think it'll be great entertainment, particularly when we have this stupid impeachment trial that I just finally turned off because Trump's lawyers are so incompetent. I'm sorry, man. I like Trump as much as the next guy, but I watched for like 15 minutes. I didn't even know what his lawyers were talking about, and I moved on to other things. Anyway, the incompetency of the GOP is another topic. Today, we're going to talk about how the New York Times staff is melting down. The resignation of star New York Times science writer Donald McNeil Jr. has sparked a furious back and forth among Times staffers, many of whom are outraged over the Gray Lady's handling of his departure. The Washington Free Beacon reviewed a series of postings to a Facebook group for current and former Times staffers where a tense debate is unfolding over McNeil's exit. One camp argues that his dismissal was justified, and another asserts it as a troubling precedent which the New York Times union should have done more to prevent. Listen, I've talked here and there about psychological safety in regards to it being the #1 factor that drives productivity in organizations, right? Psychological safety is about your ability to trust one another. Well, what happens when your whole purpose as a staff becomes deceiving people? Which is exactly what the New York Times has done. That is what their entire purpose, that is what many of their reporters literally spend all day, every day doing, deceiving the American people. Do you think that's not going to translate into how they work with each other as a staff? I think it has. Let's keep going. Whatever happened to the notion of worker solidarity? To giving a fellow worker the benefit of the doubt, says Stephen Greenhouse, who spent 3 decades covering labor issues for the Times. And why didn't the News Guild do far more to defend and protect the job of longtime Times employee, one who at times did tireless, heroic work on behalf of the Guild to help improve pay and conditions for all New York Times employees? McNeil had excoriated management's attempts to freeze pension plans in 2012, calling those involved belligerent idiots. Listen, I'm going to give you a piece of advice that is really not the news that I know most of you want to hear, but never trust your organization to have your back. I mean that emphatically. I have worked with so many different types of organizations, everything from a startup with just a few people all the way up to really, really giant Fortune 500 companies. And it is the truth is the same regardless. You never trust your organization to have your back because most of the time they will not. They lie about their employees. They twist things that have happened to have it fit the story they want to tell about their employees. All the organization cares about most of the time is covering its own backside from you suing them into the ground. They do not care about hiring the best and the brightest. They do not care about promoting the most competent. And in fact, most of the time, the people who have the most initiatives and frankly the most potential are the ones that will be dropped the quickest because they rock the boat. I am telling you guys, when you go out of your way to do the right thing by your employer, to advocate for things, you're setting yourself up, man. And listen, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on this. I've just seen this in organizations all over the flipping country. Very rarely do I find an organization, I'm not going to say they don't exist, but very rarely have I actually worked with an organization that had the backs of their employees. I'm actually working with one right now, and it's actually kind of like a weird thing. I'm so used to in my other job, I'm so used to working with organizations that treat their employees really badly without noticing it, that it's actually odd for me now to be working with an organization that isn't doing that and is trying to do right by their employees. It's a weird thing. Anyway, I say this as a warning because so many of you think that if you go in, you do the right thing, you advocate for people, you have people's backs, then that's going to come back to you. Oftentimes, it doesn't. The only security you ever have is when you work for yourself, which is why I've been working for myself for about 6 years now. Okay. Times crossword columnist Deb Amlin accused Greenhouse of an excessive focus on the perpetrator, arguing that he and others should shift their attention to the people McNeil had harmed. Why is it the focus of discussions like this is always on ruining the perpetrator's lives and not about those who were harmed by his actions? She asked. Reached for a comment, Amlin told the Free Beacon that this is a private group and that she would appreciate it if you not use anything I said or wrote. Kudos to the Washington Free Beacon on that one. The back and forth provides a window into the latest racial controversy roiling the paper, which saw a revolt among many minority staffers over the summer after publishing an op-ed by Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Opinion editor James Bennett ultimately lost his job. McNeil's ouster came nearly 2 years after the incident that precipitated this. While chaperoning high school students on a pricey trip to Peru, the science reporter responded to a question from a student about whether one of her classmates should have been suspended for using the N-word. In the process, he uttered the offending syllables himself. An Internal Times investigation found his judgment wanting, but stopped short of firing him. Only after the Daily Beast published an account of the incident, because all they're interested in is these gotcha games. This is not news. I'm sorry. A reporter for the New York Times uttering a word in the context of a conversation. I don't care if I particularly agree with his decision to actually use the word or not. I wasn't there. I don't know the full context. But like, the fact that he only got fired after it was reported by another publication, this is nonsense right here. And this shows you this is all they're interested in is these gotcha games. The Daily Beast literally eating people from the New York Times. This is why I am not at all worried about the Democrats being able to overcome their internal bickering to actually get anything productive done. I digress. Only after the Daily Beast published an account, the incident thrusting it into the public realm for the first time, was McNeil pushed out. We do not tolerate racist language regardless of intent, Dean Beckett, the paper's executive editor, told staff in an email. So let's keep that in mind. Now the position of the New York Times is that if you use the offending words ever, you're out. Context doesn't matter. Intent does not matter. And this is where it really gets interesting. McNeil's resignation letter on Friday and Beckett's post hoc explanation that intent doesn't matter renewed the bitter debate among staff, with reporters warring with each other in public and private. A Times spokeswoman muddied the waters further on Sunday, telling the Free Beacon that racial epithets have no place in the newspaper. The paper printed the same epithet as recently as last week in a magazine profile of the Princeton classics professor Dan L. Padilla Peralta. Even in ironic or self-mocking quotations about a speaker's own group, in a rap lyric for example, their use erodes the worthy inhibition against brutality in public discourse. Danielle Rose Saha told the Free Beacon she declined to say that if policy extends to social media, where other New York Times writers, including Nicole Hannah-Jones and Estee Hernan, have quoted the slur. Nicole Hannah-Jones, as you recall, is the Pulitzer Prize winner for the 1619 Project. Beckett's statements in particular come in for scathing criticism in the Facebook discussion. We do not tolerate racist language regardless of intent might be the most racist statement I've ever heard, says Lawrence D. Maria, an award-winning crime and finance reporter. It demeans all races. It is also true Larry Wilmore did not say, "You did it, my Hannah Jones wrote in 2016, referencing the black comedian's routine at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, there is a linguistic difference between two words I'm not going to say. The Washington Free Beacon asked Hannah Jones whether intent made a difference in her case. She responded by posting the reporter's inquiry, including his cell phone number, on Twitter in direct violation of the website's terms of service. So a reporter asked Nikole Hannah-Jones about this whole affair, and she responded by literally doxing him. Posting his phone number on Twitter because she, a reporter at the flipping New York Times, was asked a question. They're going to go down, man. They may not go down immediately. They might not go down for this one thing because they get away with this stuff all the time. But mark my words, like these are the hallmarks of like a sinking ship right here. Greenhouse argued that the staffers who went after McNeil, including Hannah Jones and race reporter John Illagong, had their priorities backwards. Many of them, he wrote in the Facebook group, were far more willing to sympathize with those privileged 15 and 16-year-olds than longtime colleagues who had done much great work for the Times over the years. So they're talking about like these kids who in high school got to go on a really expensive trip to Peru. Like I didn't get to go on a trip to Peru in high school. I wasn't even allowed to study abroad in college because it was too expensive for my parents, right? But these kids got to go do that, and they're taking the side of these kids claiming they were harmed, these kids that have so literal privilege. This is the literal definition of privilege. And they're taking their side over someone who has worked for this newspaper for decades. The debate also spilled over into Twitter. Times reporter Michael Powell sparked backlash from colleagues when he tweeted a statement from the nonprofit literary organization PEN calling McNeil's ouster chilling. Illagong responded by accusing him of racism. They're turning on each other. It's so great. You often wonder what your white colleagues who are lovely to your face are actually thinking or saying about you, or people like you, behind your back. Because no one is allowed to have an opinion on anything anymore without it being racist, according to the New York Times. The lack of clear standards has generated frustration internally. I don't think anybody feels like we have any clarity about what happened with that incident or other alleged incidents, said one New York Times reporter told the Free Beacon. We demand transparency of other people, and we don't have it in our own processes. It also raised questions about who really edits the paper. Paquette or the radicals who work for him. Dean and AG made a decision and then bullied by a vocal minority into changing their minds, Times contributor Robert Worth said in the Facebook groups. This is not the New York Times. I know. Dude, trust me, it is only going to get worse for the New York Times unless they get a handle on this and fire the troublemakers and their staff right away. Listen, I'm telling you, like, it only takes like one or two troublemakers within an organization to rile up everyone else enough to sink the productivity of the entire organization. And I don't know when the public is going to start turning on the New York Times. I mean, it has to happen at some point. Like, Trump is now out of office. They can't blame Trump. Well, I suppose they can blame Trump for everything for like another week while this impeachment trial goes on. But there legitimately is going to be a time where these people aren't going to be able to blame Trump for everything anymore. What's going to happen then? I don't know, man. I love it. I love it. This is great. This is comeuppance in the best possible way. That's all I've got for right now. I'll see you soon.